Hey everyone, it's Gabby
and Danny
and Manny,
and you're listening to Oye, Let's Talk. We're going to be talking about a topic that I am super excited for, actually passionate about. I don't have very many strong opinions about things, but I am extremely passionate about cutting the cord. What does that mean? I'm not talking about umbilical cords, though you should cut those too. I'm totally talking about cable and streaming services. Like, cut that cord, forget cable, it's a thing of the past. I'm a millennial. With the millennial generation came Netflix. I went from the DVD to now straight up you only stream on the internet and love it. Made the switch. Don't even pay for cable anymore. Any channels. Like, I just scroll. It's super fun.
Hold up. What happened to VHS? You totally skipped those, like, 80s, 90s generation.
I have, like, all the Pokemon series, and I haven't tossed those out, or the Disney ones, but otherwise, VHS can go.
Well, okay. Cut the cord, dump your VHS tapes, your DVDs. Well, I feel like it's safe to say that I think most of our listeners probably cut the cord already. I think that's safe to say. Right? Yeah. I think when do you guys remember really getting into Netflix and really making that transition from watching, cable to just stream? Because I don't know about you guys, but I barely watch, obviously only for the news and for work, I watch cable. But besides that, I really don't watch cable. What about you guys?
I think I own what Spectrum calls digital channels now, which you need internet to see. Live TV is basically it. Like, you get the local ones and then 10 that you select. So it's not exactly cable. So if my internet goes out, can't watch TV either. But I think I truly cut the cord when I had to pay my own bills. So
the struggle is real.
Because when I saw cable an extra $20, I'm like, well, I have to have internet regardless. So I would rather, instead of paying extra $20 to have limited channels, I'll spend the extra 10 or $11 on Netflix.
Same.
And
that was the same with me in Chicago.
See, I think it's just so much easier. But nowadays, people don't do the cable thing at all. If you have an Amazon Prime account, people just do Amazon Prime to watch movies too. I think the genius aspect is if you can overlap on some things, like Amazon bio packages, which I just placed an order, and also watch movies. Or Netflix, you have shows, movies, new stuff, etc.
I can't remember the last time that I actually watched live television. I mean, since I was little, I was kind of spoiled because I always had some sort of recording device, like a TiVo of some sort. And that would allow me, that would allow me to watch my shows without advertisements. And if I had to study all night kind of thing, I didn't want to miss my show, obviously. So I would rely on that. And then in college, I didn't have cable. I watched everything on Netflix and old shows too. I love rewatching some of my favorite shows.
Like Gilmore Girls, I was gonna say
the best show ever.
The foundation of our friendship.
I started watching
can't relate.
others.
It was the foundation of our friendship, Manny. You don't understand.
Yeah, okay, moving on.
It's a journalism thing.
Well, I think it's safe to say that our generation, and even the generation coming up, Gen Z, right? And I even see my niece and my nephew, they're 7 and 5. And all they watch Netflix. That's they don't
on
consume
a tablet,
and you
probably?
No, on their TV also, on their smart TVs, obviously. So yeah, that they only consume media through either streaming services or YouTube. And I think it's pretty amazing that we live in a time that you literally get to pick what you want to watch, when you want to watch it. You don't have to tune in at 5 on Fridays to catch the new episode of so-and-so, and kind of like that. And I feel like we all kind of agree on that same boat. But I do want to, this is a qualm I have about Netflix per se, where they kind of drop all their the entire season. I know some people like that, but I think I'm gonna be
the concept.
I like that because I like to binge watch too, but sometimes I'll binge slowly, I'll watch 2 episodes a night instead of the entire season.
Right.
But the argument I want to bring up is do you guys think, because since we're not all watching it at the same time, there isn't that discussion, because I'm thinking back to Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, you know, every Friday, obviously it was like one of the biggest watched shows in the world, but like every Friday, you know, it was dropping, and it was just this major like discussion on social media. And since now we moved on more to streaming, where you can watch whatever whenever you want, there isn't really that discussion in the moment. It's sporadic, or like, you know, I may watch something and it's not really being spoken about, or maybe I missed the train and like people already saw this show. Like you, I remember you, I hopped really late on it, and by the time I got on it, like nobody was really talking about it. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Kind of like, do you guys like that or not?
I don't know. I have like some mixed feelings about it, but a lot of it has changed over time. So, like for instance, I still like my freeform soap operas, and I don't watch them live. I watch it when they put it on their streaming service, or like to stream it online. Or sometimes I'll wait for like, okay, here's my taste, like Riverdale, for instance. I can watch on the CW, but instead of watching then, I'll just wait until the whole season gets uploaded to Netflix if I'm too far behind and miss a few episodes, because those apps like the CW app and Freeform, they remove episodes as they get older. So with that being said, it's true. Like if I go on Twitter and I see someone like talk about the Riverdale episode and like I missed too many and I'm going to have to wait for the whole season to come out on Netflix, like I do feel left out, but I also go on like the deep dark Twitter hole and I'm like, oh, this is what I can expect. Cause I'm not someone who gets.
Oh no, I avoid it if I can. Like for example, The Bachelor and Bachelorette. Like I recently got into it like these past couple of years. I don't know why, I just did. And it's like a guilty pleasure of mine. And I think that's like the only thing that I might watch live. And if I don't, like I will avoid Twitter if I can. Like if I need it for work, because I tend to be on social media mainly for work, then I'll specifically go to it with that mindset and not scroll, not look at the feed, not look.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot of dedication.
Spoilers.
Danny does not want a Bachelorette spoiler at all, guys.
No, I hate spoilers. Like it's like a turn off. Like it makes me not want to watch anymore, because what's the point? I already know the ending.
Well, okay, well, to tell you the type of person that I am, I would sometimes skip to the end of books to know what would happen before.
I hate people like
no, but
same. You're canceled.
But that being said,
who does that? You're
like,
a psychopath.
I feel like something I am, perhaps, in terms of like literary psychopaths. I guess that's me. But no, like to the point, I'm just saying like there's two different kinds of people. So Manny, you like enjoy taking in a show and you don't want to like consume it all at once. But I was also the type, you know, going back to books that like the last Harry Potter book, I read it in 18 hours straight just because like I wanted to know what happened. I'm so interested in the show. Like I care more.
Right. And you didn't skip to the ending?
That one I didn't. Because I was zooming through it basically.
What a disservice you would have done to a classic.
Well, that's personally how I felt about it. But I think the fifth book I like skipped to the end because there's boring parts. Not that I do those shows. I digress. Point being is there's two different types of people. Is that you like to consume your media, you like to enjoy it. You don't want like you're concerned about how other people's may view it, and other people may not care about the input of others. Like I don't care what other people have to say. I don't care about the Twitterverse or anything. Like, I care about how the show makes me feel and what I'm interested in, and like etc. Which I can say like my taste in TV is unconventional. It's not like, oh, Gabby would love this. It's a wide array of things. So I'm never concerned about spoilers or if someone likes something but doesn't, or if people get hooked on a show and I come in a little later. Because at the end of the day, like time and place is how I feel about it.
I'm like the complete opposite. Like I hate watching a show that no one's watching. Really? Call me weird.
Bandwagoner.
You're so mainstream.
I'm a bandwagon show watcher because one of my biggest sources of like recommendations is someone else. If someone else is watching, they tell me, oh, like this is good, then I'm gonna be like, okay, I know you, I trust your recommendation, I'm gonna go watch this. And then at the end of the day, it's gonna be something that I can talk to that person about. It's gonna be an experience. It's gonna be a common ground that we can have a conversation.
So you'll bond over. I get
it. If I'm watching a show that no one's watching, I'm not like Gabby. I have no one to talk to about it.
I mean, I will say for me personally, it depends on the show. like I like to have a conversation with someone and bounce off ideas, or like if we both understood, because there's some shows that are very complicated, and I like to bounce off my ideas if it's what I understood, if that's what it really was, like if that was intentional or
Right,
not.
right.
But sometimes like I like discovering shows as well, and I don't really care if nobody else is watching it. I just think it depends.
So actually, like, this is a great transition to my struggle with that is like now Netflix is releasing original novelas. And a lot of the novelas that my family or my grandmother or people I know would watch on Univision or Telemundo, but Netflix is making original ones. And so I've been like eating those up, and my everyday friends like don't, either they don't watch novelas because they have that stereotype, or they don't speak Spanish and understand that, or care to watch with subtitles like how I do. So with that being said, like I can't care solely based off other people's recommendations. Like I still take them into account, but that's a handy thing about Netflix is like it'll recommend stuff based on what I watch, and totally use it. I think their algorithm works because beforehand it was a little wacky.
But will you watch the telenovelas with your family, or will you watch them by yourself?
No, I watch them by myself. Like I binged the last season of one today for sure. Like spent 6 hours, sat in my bed, did not do anything.
Nice. Which one?
La Chicas del Cable, of course. Everyone watch it. Highly recommend. Very fitting.
You've seen Casa de Papel?
No,
though, right?
I haven't, but my roommate's watching it right now, so
You have to.
I will.
I have to watch it too. I haven't, and I know that's a big bandwagon. I haven't hopped on that one. Okay.
I just been apprehensive about it.
So obviously, I feel like we all enjoy our shows on Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, wherever our streaming provider is. But I feel like one of the biggest components that these streaming services are lacking, that I'm honestly scared for in our future, in our country's future, just as us and our future generations, is the lack of a news source. Like Netflix, there's no, there's obviously documentaries and things like that, but there's no like current events. Like, oh, let me see what's going on with Corona. You know, there's nothing local that Netflix is going to provide, or any other streaming services. And honestly, guys, that kind of scares me, because if we as a society, we completely transition into the streaming services where we don't have live TV, where does that leave news? Where does that leave news sources? You know, where people won't be able to access it on their TVs. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, YouTube does have a series of like a news trending section, and I don't know if you necessarily need like a movie TV streaming service for that. Like, I get your concern, but at the same time, like the official websites for like NBC, CNN, Fox, they all have their own like watch live here that you could directly go to. But I guess that's
they do.
You might need a provider. Is that where you're going with that?
That's more national news. So like those live things is more national news. Right. Where would people consume local news? If it's obviously, yeah, people can log on to a website or
download
an app,
the OTT
on TV.
Like the
download
OTT,
the what?
like a lot of
your application,
a lot of local stations, the same way that you would download like the CW app for your Roku or something. A lot of local news stations have adopted that OTT style, which is basically like on-demand news. So when a newscast is going live, you can stream it live. But a lot of other stations, which I have been looking into it more beyond the national news, like I was looking at Nashville's Fox stations, and they have like all of their franchises on there, or like weather updates consistently every hour that I guess one of their meteorologists puts together a forecast. And basically, if you had that app and you turned it on at any point in time, like except for getting a full-fledged newscast at whatever hour, you pretty much get enough info for Nashville per se. And I think that's interesting because Nashville being like a top market as well, and a leader in a lot of digital initiatives, I thought that was a great idea. So I think local news is just going to have to evolve like everything else at the end of the day.
I would really like to see that movement, and to be more prominent, honestly, where we can have that, you know, at our fingertips, more like kind of the same way that we do on Netflix. But I mean, hopefully it's coming. I'm just scared for future generations and people not being informed and being ignorant. Cough, cough. Not wanting to wear a mask. It's like, come on, like, or have you turned on the TV? You know, and that's honestly what I'm scared of. Like, imagine ignorant people not understanding current events, and it's like.
But I think that's happening even now. It happened before our time. I think it's gonna happen regardless of what platform.
Oh my God.
unfortunately, like that's just the way we're built.
regardless of
Yeah,
how
it
we
just
get it.
depends on the person and how informed they want to be, you know, how educated they want
That's
to
my
be.
point, is that
Exactly.
Great
news has
Danny.
been, if anything, available in more platforms than ever. But I am concerned that if news ever goes to, like, local news ever makes a transition to the streaming, like cutting the cord, no more antenna, etc., that you just need internet, like the access, like there's just so many little issues. Like, will everyone have internet by that time? Because when I worked in Missouri, like 30% of the
Interesting.
state
Yeah.
didn't. So the governor was running on, I'm
Really?
bringing people. Yeah, because there's a lot. It's a lot of field and
Yeah,
country.
yeah, yeah. That's a big issue in rural areas. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So it depends. Like if you're in a big metropolitan area, it's easy to cut the cord. For other people, like you might not even have the option to. And speaking in terms of local news, like the people who are loyal viewers for like 30, 50 years or so, they're the ones that are going to have a hard time making the transition. So you're going to lose like loyal viewership. And that's like the whole issue with all these business models, is like, how do you transition? Like as there's a new era approaching, how do you transition people to come with you? And that's the reason, rather, that I don't think we're going to see anything anytime soon, because that's just too hard to leave people out. And that's the crutch of news, is that you're trying to inform as many people as possible. So we'll get more platforms, but they'll never like let one go, especially something as big as live
Right.
TV.
Definitely,
Right.
definitely. Hopefully, here's to a brighter future. That's all I'm gonna say. Go ahead, Gabby.
With that said, I did want to like transition a little bit, because this idea of different media being available to a larger amount of people, like for instance, we were just talking about news, but there's two major Spanish news stations, like Univision and Telemundo, are pretty much the dominant ones. But when you think about it, that means like there's only been two channels for people who speak primarily Spanish to watch, whether that be their novelas or their news. But with streaming services, they suddenly have so much more at their fingertips, like way more options, and the option to binge, which my grandmother does not understand the concept.
Yeah, I think that's why Netflix has such a, what's it called? Why they're so popular, I guess, worldwide. Not that the other ones aren't either, but it's just it's been such a hit from the start, because you have other international movies, you have like Bollywood and you know, like Asian American, like you have so many other sections and like worldly.
Oh
I
no, girl,
mean,
I get you. Like I can watch my anime, my Korean dramas, my Spanish telenovelas.
exactly, and you don't find that anywhere else. Like it's very hard to find it in like a non-sketchy website, you
Yeah,
know?
like Hulu doesn't have it.
No, for sure. And I can totally rate, because my dad loves watching TV and he loves watching movies and TV shows. And while I've tried to find content for him, like on Hulu or Amazon, they just don't have it. And if you find something that's like subtitles, but Netflix gives you that language, that audio option in not just Spanish, but French, Chinese, you know, it's so many options that it really opens that door of content for everyone, not just, Americans or English speakers.
And to me, that's like the real cool part, and why Netflix is still, I would call it, the streaming industry standard. And they've gotten so much better at it. And the other idea is that a lot of these other platforms, I don't want to say regurgitate content, but a huge part of their following, or like a huge contract, is that they're playing shows that people have already seen before. So this is just me relating it back to Netflix, because I'm not as familiar with Hulu, but like Friends. Like people loved Friends, so they would binge watch it on Netflix, and maybe it would edge them towards, hey, I'm thinking of cutting the cord. Well, let me get Netflix because I love Friends and I love The Office and etc. But Netflix is creating a lot of its original content, and that's not to say that like other platforms aren't as well, like Amazon Prime.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Amazon for
Yeah,
sure.
like they're doing great, but that wasn't the case originally. It used to be like, rent this movie that you probably saw before or already came out in theaters, but it was nothing necessarily new or exclusive. And Hulu's doing the same thing, creating its own content. And that's why I think cutting the cord is so important, because what are you going to get from cable that you're not going to find on streaming platforms? Like, I feel like the risk is very small there.
Right. But you know what's scary? So originally, going off, like, Netflix originally had less original content, and they were just, buying these licenses like The Office, Friends, like these big shows, How I Met Your Mother. But eventually these licenses are expiring, and they're going to go back to the original distributor. And those original distributor, or those networks, are creating their own streaming services. But slowly over the past few years, Netflix has been creating its original content to keep those subscribers, even though why they originally maybe subscribed at the beginning, maybe 5 years ago, that they can still stay on for that original content of telenovelas or anime, etc. So I think it's very interesting. The entire industry itself, all these networks are creating their own platforms. Netflix is creating more original content, and I feel like we're going to continue seeing that. And it's interesting. It's going to be interesting what's going to happen to Netflix at the end of the day, when it no longer has any of those, shows, and it's just relying on original content. And what will happen if us as consumers will be willing to pay for more than one streaming service? Are we just going to have Netflix, or are we going to have Netflix, NBC's or CBS's streaming platforms? And at the end of the day, it's like you're paying what, like $10 for each streaming service? It can add up. So where do you guys see people moving towards? Do you think they'll just have one streaming platform? Do you think people will have several? I mean, we'll obviously be sharing our platform passwords
So
also.
actually, like that, this was an interesting fact that I looked when we were researching this topic I say post pandemic, but like current pandemic, I guess. So TV Technology said that 40% of Netflix subscribers added on another streaming service during the pandemic. And a lot of them, like, you had to fact
Interesting.
Disney Plus was relatively new and just added more things. So maybe like,
we haven't spoken about Disney Plus.
Dude, we'll get there. But Disney Plus was one of the top ones, and I'm assuming because like if you're very family oriented and you have children in the house, like you probably needed more kid friendly stuff since your kids were at home more often. Like their brains couldn't just
forget about kids. When I heard Lizzie McGuire was gonna be on it, I was so thrilled. Like that was my show when I was little, like obsessed with Hilary Duff. And then I found out that something happened and they wouldn't let her do something, and now it's no longer on Disney Plus. And I'm like, is it really worth it now? I don't know. So, talking about those consumers that only look for that one show.
So actually,
yeah.
but actually, like Disney Plus, like the viewership is all like family age adults who are signing up for it, or they call millennials like the nostalgia era. Because
you see, I'm not the only
one.
But
a lot of people that are like in their early to mid 20s or like early 30s have signed up for Disney Plus, for like either Star Wars material because it like saw a resurgence, but also because of like some of the nostalgia. So it's interesting because something like Disney Plus that kids would be interested in, like they're watching old content like for that we are familiar with or that we grew up with, and it's easy for us to make the switch to something like Disney Plus because it's familiar. Whereas Netflix, I would say, would have been maybe like a more scarier jump for adults if they're used to their cable.
Right, because, yeah.
And that being said, Manny, like discussing the future of what cutting the cord could look like, people are just going to get multiple streaming services. Like Hulu and Disney Plus came in a bundle at some point, and you were paying $10 or $12 for both.
That's Netflix right,
pretty cheap.
Yeah, I think Amazon Prime and Netflix, I think, are the more expensive ones, but Disney Plus is actually extremely affordable. And I want to say mostly because their content it's very like tiered and geared to some of certain audience. Like I can say that there's not endless options on Disney Plus now that we're on the topic. Like, do I really want to watch Aristocats for the 5th time? Or I'm not going to watch a lot of these kids shows. I'm watching The Proud Family right now because that was a great show. But otherwise, I'm not on Disney Plus nearly as much as I like go to Netflix. But I will say that I'm more, because it all comes down to like how easy these platforms are to utilize as well. Like Netflix is by far the easiest in my opinion. Disney Plus doesn't even have like go back to what you're watching yet. So I imagine it's going to get more expensive once they do more things to it. And Hulu to me it depends on what you want to look for. But those I think are the top 3 right now that are kind of competing for people's attention.
Netflix actually added 15.8 million subscribers during the pandemic. I just wanted to throw that out there. And now Netflix has roughly 182 million subscribers worldwide.
That's
So when you
insane.
Yeah.
That's
That's
insane.
according
That's a
to
lot
The
of people.
Verge, an article in
So
The
you
Verge.
have to remember, like, that's not even specifically people, because everyone shares accounts. Like,
Right.
there's 4
Right.
people
So
that use
imagine.
mine. So, like, let's say it's just 3 per each. Like, oh my gosh. I would say there's a billion people who use Netflix.
Oh, for sure. I agree with you, Gabby, that slowly, I think, especially Disney Plus, it just rolled out. It's going to increase its prices. That's definitely going to be a thing, especially when they roll out more content. And side note on Disney Plus, Sleeper, they own National Geographic, and there's some great documentaries on there that I've been watching. Just
Oh,
want to
wow.
say a really good reason to also watch Disney Plus. But a really big thing, and Hulu has this service where you can pay obviously a little extra and you can watch live TV. So I really want to see other streaming services adopt that, because I like that option of having, hey, I kind of like sports. You can't watch pre-recorded sports. Like, you want to watch live sports. I think that would be a very big thing where you're like, oh, let me maybe buy like a live sports bundle, with my streaming services where I can watch, or a news bundle. I think I would want to see the industry move towards that, where people have that option of, still having their live TV for certain things, events, sporting events or news events, and having more content, obviously. But I don't know. I find it very hard. Well, I'm not gonna lie, because I have both Netflix and Amazon Prime, because I was just about to say, I'm like, I don't want to pay
Same.
for a second service, but I already pay for I know. I pay for Amazon Prime, but just also because it comes with, you get Amazon Prime on your shipping services. So it's kind of like a win-win.
That's my point. That's what I think a lot of streaming services are going to do. So, like, Hulu and Disney Plus probably competed by bundling, because Amazon could bundle within itself, if that makes any sense. And then I kind of want to go back to the sports topic for a second, Manny, because I forgot where I read it, but I found it interesting because a lot of bars were losing money, but during the pandemic, obviously. But bars, like, obviously for big games and such, like, they're concerned about come fall, because football nights would bring people in.
Interesting.
And I heard so many men that just out and about, or like in conversation or casual conversation, they would say, like, yeah, I don't have cable, so I rely on going to a bar to watch sports.
Oh,
Yes.
true.
Yes, I can relate. Like, Gator games, like, I can, like, find like a bootleg website. But you like, I don't have cable, so yeah, I would go to the bars and watch it, or like a Heat game for
Or the
sure.
World
That's so
Cup,
true.
or the Olympics.
Yeah. Oh,
Dude,
yeah.
dude, that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking about. Is like, oh, if like the Gators don't have a real football season or something, like, I see the bars being packed without the tailgating, and if there's no fans in the stands.
Yeah, for
So I'm like, I
sure.
don't know how social distancing is going to work in that aspect. But one of the downside, I think, of cutting the cord is, if you're a huge sports fan, it's like really hard. Which I think, again, the sports industry is just going to catch up eventually. Or they're
They
gonna give the
better.
live option, like OTT app, all this stuff that we were discussing beforehand. Again, I just think it's just about evolution, because we went from VHS to DVD to streaming. So I don't doubt that there's another step. We just don't foresee it yet.
I agree. I agree. Well, I hope I can still get my sports and news in the near future without having to pay
You sound
extra,
so
but I think
old,
that's a
Manny.
fantasy.
Like, I need my
I sound
7 o'clock news.
He's an old school.
Bad on my news.
Give me my football.
No, guys, I just think, hello, sports makes the world go around, and so does
That's true.
news. I'm just
Like, those are two things that are normally safe to talk about.
Yeah.
not
Or
politics.
religion. So, everyone, we want to know how you're cutting the cord. What streaming services do you use? What are you binge watching? Or are you like Manny and being an old man and only watching one episode at a time? Just let us know. You can go ahead and send us a comment on Instagram. Leave a comment there. You might even hear it on here. Or go a little more old-fashioned and send us an email. We want to read them. Thanks so much for listening in. And I would just say, some of the best shows. Las Chicas del Cable. Oh my gosh. Cable Girls on Netflix. FYI, if your Netflix is not in Spanish. Great show. Highly recommend. What about you two? Sign off with a good one.
Casa de Papel, all the way.
Documentary that I just saw last night, Athlete A. So good.
So y'all heard it from us. Let us know if our taste sucks. All right, good night.